Two, one, and we're live. Welcome, 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 everyone, to your Vibrant Health Secrets. It's a delight to have you here with us today. We have a very special guest that's going to be speaking about a topic that a lot of us don't necessarily know about, but it is something that could be having a big effect on our health. So it's so important to understand about this. And I'm just delighted that Karen has joined us. She's also on the EMF Summit that we're doing, which is all aspects of electromagnetic fields, the negative and the positive. And in this world that we're living today, we are so surrounded by electromagnetic radiation. It's coming in from the neighbors with their wireless, it's coming in from the neighbors' smart meters, it's coming in from our own smart meters, it's coming from our computers, from our refrigerator, from our microwave, from all of the gadgets that we're surrounded with. And it's also coming in through the pipes of our house. So, and the wiring in the walls. There's a great deal to understand. And my guest today that is with us, she has had an experience that really is tremendously difficult to understand. And I'd like to introduce to you Karen Mileson. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of technical difficulties today, and her name tag isn't showing up. So we'll just keep repeating that it's Karen Mileson. Karen, thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to ask you a question. What gives you the right to be here, and why should people listen to you?
Well, first of all, Allison, thank you for having me here. What gives me the right, I believe, is that my husband and I experienced a lot of things, and we not only lived in a house that became a sick house, but we built that house. And my husband got sick soon after we moved in, and I got sick soon after we moved in. My husband got sick and later died, and I had to figure out why we were both sick there. And I did figure that out, and not only figured it out, but I did find a solution for that. So I believe that's what gives me the right to be here, is that I learned a lot, and I have information and products that can help other people.
Okay, so you built your dream house. What was it like? Can you describe it to us?
In what way? What do you mean?
What was the house like? Give us a visual picture of the house. It had a metal roof, for one thing.
It didn't have a metal roof, but it had metal lath all around the side of it, underneath the stone, and we had a lightning protection system. My husband was an engineer. The house was pretty much the highest spot on the land, and he wanted a good lightning protection system. And what I found out later was that the lightning protection system was acting much like a metal roof does, and it was pulling in lots of toxicity. And not only pulling it in, but it was like a cap in keeping in all of the toxicity. We also had a large satellite dish on the top of the house, and that was pulling in energies also. And so we had the energies coming in from the earth, the energies from the electricity, and everything was being held in the house. So it was just, every day it was getting more and more toxic.
So what happened? You moved in there and you were fine, you felt great, and then how soon did you start to feel some effects, and what were the effects that you started to feel?
I started feeling effects soon after I moved in, and I didn't, of course, know that it was the house. I didn't really know what it was. At the same time, I was having my mercury fillings replaced, so I thought, well, maybe that's what it was. And it took me a very long time to figure it out. My husband has a very strong constitution, and he wasn't aware of any problems. Now, my body is very, very sensitive, so I was aware that there was a problem, but I didn't know what it was. You know, I'm kind of like the canary in the coal mine, where my husband had to develop tumors before he even knew what was happening. Now, we both had trouble sleeping when we moved in, soon after we moved in. And that was really the first symptom, the first clue that we had that something was wrong. I started getting a lot of headaches. That's another pretty common symptom for both EMF and geopathic stress, which is one of our major problems. And also, like other people that are sensitive to electricity, I had problems vomiting bile a lot, I mean, almost daily for a number of years.
And did you go and see physicians about this and try to get help?
Well, you know, I had my own practitioners that I went to on a regular basis, you know, a cranial osteopath and a chiropractor, and, you know, I was in the health field at the same time. So we were doing a lot of really good therapies, and we were on a pretty good diet, had a good lifestyle, but yet I was getting sicker and sicker. And that's another clue of what happens in sick houses. If you're doing really good therapies and you're still getting sick. So yes, I was seeing people, but you know, I didn't really know what the problem was, and nobody else was able to figure out what the problem was.
So you reached the point where you had to be in a wheelchair sometimes to get around and stuff. You were just too weak. Is that right?
Towards the very end, yes. And I needed the wheelchair only when I traveled. I should have had a walker in the house, but I didn't. And I didn't go anywhere at that point unless I had to go for some sort of a treatment. I had people there that were helping me, preparing food, taking me places, and so, you know, I didn't have to walk more than a few feet at a time. But towards the end, and this was, oh, maybe 15 years later, it took that long for me to get that sick. My sister came out. I was not able to do very much, and my sister came out, helped pack me up, and moved me here to Colorado. And that's when things changed.
It's ironic that you were not leaving the house unless you needed a treatment. So you were staying.
Yes.
Homebound.
Yes. It was making me a lot worse.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
Yes, and before my husband had the tumors, he had been in a ski accident, and he broke his back and broke a leg. So he was in a body cast for months, sleeping. He couldn't leave the house. The only time he left is if they came and got him to take him to get x-rays. So he was in the most toxic area in the house 24/7 without us realizing what it was. Plus his immune system wasn't, you know, what was using his energy to heal his bones, you know, because we weren't sure how well his back was going to heal. So I think that's what really got to him, was the healing the bones and healing from the ski accident.
Wow. So for the new people that have joined, we're with Karen Mileson. Karen Mileson has been interviewing people, helping people, writing a book about the sick house syndrome and how we can energetically heal ourselves and the different tools and so on that we can use. Karen, you know, how long did it take for your husband to start developing these tumors?
It took about 11 years that we were in the house. He generally was not in the house as much as I was, because he went out to work. I generally worked at home. He went out to work, so he was out more than I was, although I was outside, you know, gardening and doing other things. But I think because of his strong constitution, he was not aware of what was happening. And he was just not aware, other than trouble sleeping, he was not aware of any symptoms. So it's like I knew to take care of myself, but he, you know, if you don't have symptoms, you don't really know what's coming. And it's a far cry from having trouble sleeping to having tumors and seizures.
And how long did it take after he was diagnosed with the tumors and the seizures for him to pass away?
The seizures started around December and he passed away in October, so not very long.
Wow.
And we did a lot of therapies, we tried a lot of things, and we kept coming back to the house. We kept coming back to the source of the problem, which is another lesson that I learned the hard way, is that you have to eliminate or neutralize the source of the problem. Once you do that, then the toxins will start releasing. And every time we did a therapy, we came back to the house, and we started getting sicker and sicker.
I can't even imagine it. It must be just a horrible scenario to not know that it's your house that's bothering you, and then to, how do you eliminate things when you don't know what the core of the problem is?
That's the problem, and I've learned a lot. It's been almost 20 years since my husband's death, and I've learned a lot about how to look at the core of the problems and how to test things differently. So that's been part of my research also. So hopefully these kinds of things don't have to happen again. I have a little bit better idea of what to look for, and I have a whole lot better idea of how to test homes.
So how did you first discover that something was going on with your home? What triggered you? At this point, your husband's passing away, you're unable to walk any more than a few feet, and so on. What was it that opened your eyes to it? How did you first discover?
That even before my husband's death, we were very suspicious that the house might be a problem. And we even at that time, we were using products to neutralize geopathic stress. And I believe they were helping, but the products were for the EMFs, not the geopathic stress. So we even had 2 dowsers work on the house, and we thought, well, maybe that's doing it, but he was still getting sicker and sicker. I mean, at that point, I had heard of geopathic stress, and I could test it to some degree, but I didn't really know how to test the house, and I didn't have any idea of how to fix it then. So we did have an idea. At one point, I got kind of a hit to do some testing outside, and when you're in an environment that's very toxic, you can't always test for the environment that you're in. It's better if you leave the environment to do the type of testing that I do. And what I eventually did was I went outside, and I did some testing outside in 2 different areas, and the testing was much different than inside. And one area outside was on a deck, and it had an overhang. But what I didn't realize at the time was that overhang also had the lightning protection system around it. And that lightning protection system was part of what was holding in the energy even outside and was changing the testing. And then I moved away from the overhang and away from the lightning protection system, and everything changed. The testing was virtually the opposite.
So this was just like randomly that you went outside? It was some intuition that told you that you needed to start testing?
Exactly.
Now,
it still, I still didn't know enough. I mean, I knew the testing was different. We were suspicious of problems in the house. We disconnected the satellite dish. We disconnected the TV antenna, which was exactly straight over my husband's head in the bedroom. So where he spent all that time in the body cast, he had the TV antenna right above him.
Wow.
So we disconnected all of that. We did everything that we knew to do. But, we were still getting sicker and sicker.
Okay, so geopathic stress, that's caused by the Earth itself. Is that correct? It's not a man-made thing like all of our wireless devices that we're subjected to now.
That's correct. Geopathic stress is a natural form of energy that is in the Earth, and it comes up into the homes. It comes in with the electricity, so it travels through the wiring with the electricity, but it also comes in from the Earth in from the earth into the house in other areas. So it's right now it's virtually everywhere in virtually every home that has electricity.
Because of the electricity, that's what's causing it to come into the home?
No, that's only part of it. It's coming. It would be coming into the home anyway, but the electricity is making it worse because it's being picked up from the wiring and it's traveling through the wiring. So, I mean, if you were in a tent outside, there's still a very good chance these days that you would be that you would have geopathic stress in the tent, but it wouldn't be as bad because it's not going to be held in like it was like what was happening in our home.
So why these days? Why is it a better chance these days? The Earth's been around for so long. Why has it increased the geopathic stress now?
Well, you know, the Chinese knew about this over 4,000 years ago, so it has been around probably forever. But again, it goes back to part of it being the electrification of the world. That's part of what's making it worse. I think part of it, I don't know positively, but I think also part of it is that the Earth is just becoming so much more toxic. And geopathic stress coming in is bringing up the toxicity from the Earth also. The geopathic stress flows through the streams underwater, and water picks up energy very, very rapidly. So the water is picking up all of this toxicity, and it's, as the geopathic stress comes in, it's releasing all of that toxicity. And it also comes up through faults and fissures and openings in the earth, and it gets trapped in the buildings. And that's where the metal roofs are a problem also.
You know, it's interesting what you're saying because Dr. Samuel Milham, who wrote a book called Overpowered,
yes, I quote him in my book, the same thing. I read that, what he said years ago, and that stuck with me.
Yep. So he took all the people, the death records from 1937 in rural America before they had electrification, and then he gathered them in 1957 after they had electrification. And he was amazed at what he found because of the increases of heart disease, the increases of cancer, the increases of suicide, which really shocked him because he was not expecting any correlation between suicide and electrification. So he's talking about the dirty electricity, and when you're talking about how this is, the geopathic stress has increased and increased and increased, what he was saying was that the transformers now, those big transformer poles that we have, if you look at them, you'll see that there's a wire going down on the side of the transformer, which is bringing all that dirty electricity, the used electricity, into the ground. So that, too, is increasing it. But tell me more about geopathic stress. What kinds of geopathic stress are there? What are we talking about?
There are, a lot of it's coming from the grids, the energy grids. And there are three primary grids called Hartman grid, named after Dr. Hartman, and Curry grid, named after Dr. Curry, and a double grid, which is where the lines cross. And these grid lines are very much like our body's acupuncture system. And the geopathic stress travels on these grid lines. And again, it gets picked up by the water. And it's when I go outside and I do some testing or I walk barefoot on the grass, I can't find a spot now where I don't get geopathic stress.
Wow, that's amazing. So I would think that, like, the Earth, if you're talking about a grid and then the crossing over of the Curry and the Hartman two grids, that there would be some places that, like a checkerboard, that wouldn't have it.
Yes, you would think so, and I suspect that's the way it used to be, but that's not the way I see it anymore. From what I read years ago, the Hartman grid had a lot of neutral area. All of the grids had neutral area, just like you were saying, in between. Now, when I did a lot of testing on the property where we lived in Virginia, we were on 12.5 acres, and we had a stream in the front and a larger stream in the back. And what I found with the Curry grid is that it was everywhere on our property between the two streams. So I don't know exactly how that's happening. That's not the way it's supposed to be, but that's what I see. Now, the other thing I see is when the Curry, I don't see it when it reaches the water. So is that water attracting the energy? Like water attracts energy everywhere? And is that water, the above stream water that doesn't have the grid energy in it, is that neutralizing it?
Interesting, very interesting. When you think about it, what about your home now that you've moved to in Colorado? How is that testing?
Where I am now tests fine, but if I go outside, the same thing. Um, it's all around. I mean, these energies are everywhere now. I do a lot of testing with water samples, and because the water picks up energies very rapidly, and I can't put a water sample anywhere without it becoming toxic, and I mean anywhere. And part of this I learned when I was playing tennis, and I had my bottle of water on the side, and I finally realized that was picking up toxicity, and it didn't used to. So this toxicity, and it's the same, I see the same toxins, whether it's geopathic stress or EMFs, and it's everywhere now. It's in the organic food in our gardens.
Isn't that sad? I mean,
It
what
is
are
sad.
we supposed to do? But you see, the thing is that
That's why I'm here today.
yes, and I'm glad you are. I'm glad that you are sharing the information that you've learned with others, because for the new people that have joined, Karen Mileson was in a wheelchair, and then she turned her life around completely and is a downhill skier. So we're talking, 180-degree change in the experiences that she was having in her life. And now she's able to do things that I can't do. So I don't have wireless computers in my home. I use an Ethernet cable. I had a real experience from electromagnetic hypersensitivity, which caused a lot of symptoms for me that were really serious symptoms, and this happened in May. So it's taken me from May until now to really start feeling back to my old self again, but I'm extremely careful with technology, extremely careful. And I don't have a lot of experience with geopathic stress, which Karen does. And Karen, you've written a fantastic book. I just want to show the book to everybody here. It's Energetic Evolution, Our Energetic Evolution in Healing. And this book is really pretty darn amazing. There's so many things in it that you kind of give a step-by-step blueprint as to how to diagnose, how to learn about it, how to start remediating the problems that are happening. What was the first thing that you did?
As I was getting better,
Yes.
I went skiing. And, I of course, that's why I moved to Colorado. I moved here in early November. My sister, as I said, moved me out. We came here together. I flew here. I needed wheelchairs in all of the airports and to get around. And she got me settled. I moved into a 300 square foot studio, which was great because I didn't have to walk very far. She got me stocked up in food. I had people there that could help with things. And so I was going to stay there. I'd always felt better there. And so my plan was to stay there. And if I didn't get better, then I would go stay with my sister and go to Mayo Clinic and see if they could figure out what was going on. And of course, that was my last choice. The last thing that I wanted to do. Well, I moved there in early November, and a month or so later, I decided to see a trainer and see if I could start doing something to rebuild my body and, try and get a little bit better. And I just tried to walk, even if only 30 or 40 steps every day. And I did this for, I think it was just a little over 2 months. And I was working with a trainer and doing mostly weights. And then one day he said, I want you to get on the treadmill. And I didn't want to get on the treadmill. I was very nervous of it. He said, I just want you to walk a bit. And I did. And he was right there with me. And I walked. And I think I was on there, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I was okay. And I mean, I still had symptoms. I still had tremors and jerking and all that. But my legs were holding me. And so it's like the next day I figured if I can do that on a treadmill, I can ski. It's, you know, it's easier to ski sometimes than it is to walk. And I went out and I thought I'm going to ski one run on the bunny slope and see how I do. And I was more nervous about walking to and from the slopes than I was the skiing. Well, I went out, skied one run down the bunny slope and said, this is crazy. I'm going up higher. I'm getting away from all these beginners. And I skied, I was probably out maybe an hour. And it was wonderful.
You know, Karen, when you're talking about going on the treadmill, this is something that Dr. Magda Havas, when I interviewed her on the EMF Summit, she was saying that there's a lot of electromagnetic radiation that comes off a treadmill. So that people that are diabetic, for instance, that are also, they have type 3 diabetes. And type 3 diabetes is when their diabetes is aggravated by electromagnetic radiation. So when they're on those treadmills, they get worse. So a lady who was not, she had type 2 diabetes and she was not using pills. When she would go out for a walk to help lower her blood sugar, it would work. But when she would get on a treadmill, it would raise it. And so that's one of the ways that Dr. Havas helps diabetics understand if they have EHS symptoms. So perhaps your symptoms weren't EHS, perhaps your symptoms were from the geopathic stress. What do you think?
I think it was a combination of both, and it's hard to know for sure because the symptoms are so very similar. Even before my husband's death, you know, we were using other products to help with the electromagnetic stress, but not the geopathic stress. And when I moved into the place in Colorado, I was also, you know, I was using my own product then. And I hadn't gotten it to the point of working with geopathic stress. So at least at that point, I was more sensitive, I believe, to the geopathic stress than the electromagnetic stress because I was neutralizing it.
Great. Yeah. And we have a comment coming in about structured water. And this is something that I find to be extremely helpful as well, structured water. And you were talking about water neutralizing it as well. But I'd like to find out exactly how you were testing, because a lot of the scientists that I'm interviewing on the EMF Summit, what they're saying is they've got specific tools. They've got meters that measure what's happening with the radiation and so on. Are there meters to test the geopathic stress?
There are meters. There used to be meters that test it. This is something that I learned from Dr. Schimmel years ago, who was the originator of Vega testing, and his concern was that the meters were not working properly. So because of that, I never used the meters. I used the Vega system. So all of the testing that I have done with geopathic stress has been using the Vega test system, and doing that, I'm using my body or somebody else's body. So instead of using meters, I'm testing what's happening energy-wise to the electrical system and to the people that are exposed to it.
Well, that makes sense because we are energetic beings. So we have our own electrical pulse going through us and so on. When you're doing this testing, are you talking about like muscle testing where you're seeing if you're firm and strong or if you're weak? Is that the type of testing that you're doing with the Vega testing?
Yes, yes. The Vega testing was converted from using machine to also being able to use it using muscle testing. And I've had a number of different machines for testing, and I ended up throwing them all away because I could do more with the muscle testing than I could the machines. It gave me a lot of flexibility to use the machine, to use the muscle testing. When I use a muscle testing, I can see exactly what's happening to the body. I can if I had a meter and the meter tested fine, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not any toxicity or harm coming to the body from the electricity, from the geopathic stress. So, my preference is to much prefer to use the body as a gauge, and my body itself is so sensitive that it's very much a gauge itself.
That's good because you can trust your own body. You can trust what's happening. And I've interviewed so many different people that have done some simple exercises. Like, for example, just standing, and you close your eyes and you say your name. And of course your name is true. And you'll start to lean forward. And then you say something that's not the truth, and you'll see your body will start to pull away. It's really interesting the way that works. And I've seen so many different muscle tests. For example, when you hug somebody, if you hug somebody heart to heart, which is the opposite from the way we usually hug, and then you have them hold out their arm is weak afterwards. If you hug heart to heart, and then you hold out your arm, it's strong as can be, as firm as a rock afterwards. So it's really fascinating that, there is so much testing that we can actually do to do that. But you took this a step further. You actually started developing your own tools and so on. So I just want to show one of these tools that I've been using and have found very helpful. And it seems like nothing. It seems like just a little piece of glass that has a bit of carving in it. And
I had a practitioner's client say, "Oh, that's a trinket I can get in the dime store," and I think she changed her tune after using it for a little while.
Well, it really is fascinating, but how did you come to that? I mean, we're talking leaps here. I'd like to know the progression of how you came to start developing all this and learning how to heal yourself. How did you do that?
One thing is that I tested things ad nauseum. And I mean, I test things. Number one, I look outside the box. I don't look at what other people say or believe. I mean, I may look at it, but I don't necessarily believe everything. And I look for other reasons. I look for anything that will give me a clue to go to the next step. So it was a progression from one thing to the next thing. And again, I used a lot of water samples. I put water samples inside all around the house. I put water samples outside. I used testing to see what actually was in the water, and I used the Vega testing for that. And then eventually I started testing to see what would neutralize all of the toxins that I was finding in these water samples. So this was not a quick process. And again, like you said, I had to develop a lot of my own tools and testing techniques. I was in a position where I was very sick, and I watched my husband die, and I had to figure something out.
Yeah, no kidding. And I just wish that it didn't take something as such a huge loss to really provide that final impetus to be able to figure it out. Grieving in itself is debilitating. When you're feeling sick already and you're unable to walk and feeling just so horrible, it must have been a living nightmare. I can't even imagine thinking of it. And tell me something, when you're looking at water, Do you use structured water yourself?
I don't use any structured water for testing because I want the water to pick up what's in the area. Now, I do use a Vortex water, which is a type of a structured water, and I have, years ago, I developed that myself. So I used my own water and I developed my own method for using that. And I used a method, what I learned, I used to do a lot of gardening, and I used some of Rudolf Steiner's methods, his preparations. And in his preparations, you would stir them for 1 minute in a direction, and then you would stop it, create chaos, and stir in the other direction. And I used a similar method to that to create what I call the Vortex energized water. So that's what I drink, but I wouldn't use that for testing.
Yeah, yeah. I asked because I've found such success with it. This is one of the things, it's a natural water thing. It's just a hole like this, and it creates its own vortex going down. And so Patrick, one of the people that is interviewed on your Vibrant Health Secrets, he's marketing these particular water systems, filtration systems. And I noticed when I was living in a condo, which I had to move from in May, when I was living in that condo, which was just so full of EMF and perhaps geopathic stress too, I don't know. It was between a lake and a brook right in the backyard, so I'm not sure. But I certainly found nothing would grow. None of my plants, they all just keeled over and died. And when I started using the structured water, I was really amazed. So, you know, we have Judy Younghans, who's commented on the structured water. So I think that's a really big thing to add in. I know that we're joined today by Ita. So Ita McAteer, she built or rebuilt a beautiful Victorian home and so on. Are there things that she should be looking out for, that she should be aware of as she's restoring this home and so on?
Lots of things. Number one, staying away from metal roofs. Lightning protection system, if that's required, don't put it on the house. I mean, when we built the house, we thought it was going to be a healthy house. So I had looked into this long ago. The insulation that we had put in, I wanted to make sure that we didn't have foil. So metal, stay away from metal however you can. The carpenters ended up coming back with insulation, the foam insulation that had metal on it, the aluminum foil. And I had them rip it off. And because that would also hold in toxic energy. So you want a house that can breathe. That's one of the most important things. And as much non-toxic materials as you can find.
Okay, what about, Jay Clare has asked a question about people that really don't have a lot of funds to invest in restoring a home and changing things around and so on. And they may be living in subsidized housing. They may not be able to turn off the circuit breaker in their bedroom at night because it may not be available to them. What choices do these people have? What can they do to help themselves?
Well, that's what I created because, I mean, that's the product that I created. And after many, many years of working with this, and the product that you showed, one of those will neutralize the toxicity in a normal sized home from the electromagnetic stress, so everything that's electrical, and the geopathic stress. And if you have a metal roof, it will even help with that. So it's one product. I don't turn off the electricity in my home. I haven't given up any of my toys. I have Wi-Fi that's about 2 feet from me right now. I keep it on all the time. I sit by it almost all day long. I don't have a problem from it. Actually, the energies from the product are almost being expanded and sent out through the Wi-Fi. So I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you know, I use everything that I want to in my home. I have the high definition TV, and I have cordless phones, and I don't have a problem with them. I have, over the years, tested myself and tested the products, again, ad nauseum, and there is not a problem with them. I've been tested by others. I don't have the electromagnetic stress in me.
Amazing. You know, it's just amazing that you're able to do this. So, okay.
It's not just that I'm able to do that, it's something that anybody is able to do. And it's, you know, it's a pretty simple process now, although it took me about 20 years to figure it out, to really get it to where I wanted it to be.
Well, you know, I moved in May, and I went to stay in the home of friends of mine who were so generous. They allowed me to heal and so on. They had Stetzer filters throughout the house. They had a Faraday cage in their bedroom. They had a magneto pad on the bed. They'd spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to make their home as safe as possible. And they had to look at, I think, 29 different homes before they found one that measured low enough with the electromagnetic radiation. So it was pretty amazing, and I was able to heal. I did wonders, and I learned how to use my cell phone. For me, it meant putting it on airplane mode and only checking it once, you know, once a day or so. You can check it as often as you want, but you have to remember to put it back on airplane mode if you're experiencing the things that I was experiencing. And then after a summer of recovering, in September, I moved again, and I measured the place before I moved. And when I went into the bedroom, it measured just one, which is phenomenal, because the apartment that I was in before, the condo that I was in the bedroom, it was measuring over 2,000. So,
Wow.
yeah, that's a huge difference. It's
Yeah.
astronomical. But tell us a little bit about this cute, wonderful little EnerGem. Tell us what this does. I mean, you said that this lady looked at it, a patient of yours, and said, well, geez, I can buy this trinket anywhere.
Yes.
What? And then she changed her tune. Well,
Yes.
why? What is it?
The It's taken me a lot of years to make this look pretty simple, but through all the years of my testing, from seeing all of the toxicity that's in the electrical system and that's in the geopathic stress, I eventually learned to find all of the energies that would neutralize that toxicity. So the energies are being neutralized, and also the energies that I used to neutralize also had to be very beneficial and well tolerated by the body, which is another facet of the Vega testing. So I have combined a lot of different energies and frequencies, and I have a machine that I use that I electronically transfer into the EnerGems. Now I use the crystals, quartz, generally it's quartz, for the products because they hold that energy really well and they transmit that energy really well. And so it's been pretty easy. You can put one within the electrical system, you know, like setting it on a clock radio, and that energy will be picked up instantly, and it travels via the wiring through the entire home. So everything in the home is protected, and it has neutralized all of the electromagnetic stress and all the related toxins that are in the electrical system. And that even works with microwave ovens, so they're not so toxic. When people don't have an EnerGem, they use a microwave oven, that energy travels throughout the house also. And that energy goes into the foods in the refrigerator and the freezer. It zaps the nutrients from them, and that energy goes to anybody that's sitting in front of anything electrical. And the EnerGem keeps that from happening.
Oh my God, you know, it's so true what you were saying. In fact, one of a military man who was an electrician for the military and so on. He's been in contact with me because of the EMF Summit. And he told me, he said, Alison, you have to do a video on this. What he did was he borrowed his daughter's cell phone, and she was across the country from him. And he put the cell phone inside the microwave, closed the door, and had his wife telephone the microwave. Now, the microwave is supposed to be a Faraday cage. It's supposed to not allow anything out. So obviously, it shouldn't allow anything in. Well, the phone rang while it was closed inside the Faraday cage of the microwave. So they all leak. So this is something that really needs to be addressed. And I'm just so surprised, too, because, you know, what I've done with this little EnerGem is I put it on a wire. Just put it on a wire. And I don't know, I'm using a lot of different things right now because I want to be better. I want to feel better. I want to be able to go on cruises. I want to be able to travel around. I don't, you know, the airplanes now all have wireless and so on. So I need to understand, and I need to do everything that I can to help myself. But I found that this little EnerGem is really helping. What kind of feedback are you getting from people with it?
I've gotten quite a bit of feedback, and some of the best feedback I've gotten has been from people that are the most sensitive. And one woman years ago used an EnerGem, and what I had found out later after she was better was that she had been suicidal. And that changed, and it changed within days. She was living in the house that she had grown up in, and it was kind of a small farm, and she wanted to move, but she didn't have the energy to move. It's, you know, kind of where I was years ago. And she said the dishes were piling up in the sink, and she couldn't do anything. She couldn't think properly. She had brain fog, and she said it was like one of her last things that she was going to order an EnerGem, and she did. And it's like within 24 hours, she said she was walking around and humming and singing, and you know, and she started getting energy, and she started doing more, and you know, and the brain fog, within a couple of days, the brain fog was gone. And you know, she tested it a couple of times, and sometimes by accident it was moved, and she would start feeling bad, and she didn't know why, and she put it back, and the same thing happened, and she'd start singing and humming again. And she went out of town, which she could not have done before, and she didn't have an EnerGem to take with her, and she started getting sick again. And so, you know, she saw a number of times how that changed. Now, not all the changes are that dramatic. I mean, some people aren't even aware of any changes. You know, that there are a lot of people that don't feel any toxicity from the electrical system anyway, so they may not feel anything once it's fixed. But the really sensitive people are the ones that really feel it. And some of them don't feel it right away. Some of them even feel worse right away, which is, you know, it's not pleasant, but it's really a good sign because it tells you your body's changing. And again, once the source of the problem has been resolved, then the body automatically starts releasing all of this toxicity, and that's why they're feeling worse. So they need to look at it as a healing crisis. They're actually getting better even though they feel worse, and there are ways that they can assist that, you know, slow it down and help it make it a little bit easier.
And you were also involved in nutrition. So you were working with people with nutrition originally. That was your practice that you had, right? Helping people nutritionally?
Yes.
So you know the importance of whole foods and living foods and so on the body. And this is what I'm finding. I'm finding that it really is a 360-degree approach. We need to look at it from every angle possible. You know, I find that awareness is the number one thing. And, you know, we don't have time to go into every single solution that people can do, everything that they can do. But when I'm looking at your book here, which I as I said, I just find it really fascinating, our energetic evolution and healing, when I'm looking at this, the part one, you're talking about our illnesses and energetic evolution. And you go through your own experience, what happened with Don's illness and his passing away and so on, and then your mission that came, that was birthed through this horrendous experience. And then you go on to talk about our energetic evolution. And you have intention and goals of this living evolving, okay, of this life evolving. You have testing methods. So you actually go into testing methods. You have reasons to test and basic methods. You have self-testing. You have preferred testing, surrogate testing, switching, test form, testing weaknesses, the evolution of your testing procedures. And then you go all the way through, you have a whole chapter on testing procedures. So you're teaching people how to do this, how to find testing locations, testing frequency, reverse testings. And
exactly. And but part of why I'm doing that is that I don't want people to just have to believe me on what I say about the products or what's happening in their home. I want them to be able to go in and do that themselves and see for themselves what the problems are and see for themselves what will help them. And you know, they can learn to test all kinds of things themselves. So I try to teach, put in the book everything that I knew that they could learn to do if that's what they choose.
I agree with you 100%, because what you're doing is you're empowering people. You're
Yes.
empowering people to heal themselves instead of just depending on the EnerGem and thinking, well, okay, I don't understand how it works. I don't understand what this is all about, but this is going to be the thing for me. You're giving them the opportunity to really find out. And, you know, you also cover off basic charts and so on, so you have a way to chart this and document this. You're looking at emotions. And, you know, so many of the people that I work with on the EMF Summit, they're interested in self-development, in personal development, in letting go of fear, in realizing how much our emotions impact our reality, what we receive. And so you've got testing emotions, you're looking at organs and related emotions, you go through anger, release of emotions from the body, and so much more. Then you get into advanced testing. So you're looking at what's happening under your feet and core and scavenger toxins and so on. So you're looking at jaw points and the teeth. I mean, it's just huge, planes of consciousness. And you have chapters, a whole section on energetic life force. And you're looking at all of the different life forces and everything that we can do with that. And that's just in part 2. But you also have part 3 where you really get into the geographic stress and the evolution of the EnerGems, which, you know, is really it's fascinating, including the placement of the EnerGems, so where you're going to put them in your home when you have them. You're looking at all of the different type of research relating to geomagnetism and illness. And you explain in detail what the Curry grid is, what the Hartman grid is. And you get into all of this in great detail. So I really want to take my hat off to you for this book, because I think you've done a huge service to mankind. You didn't have to do that. You could have just recovered.
Well, I did have to do that. You know, I think that's part of why my husband and I were in that house to begin with. You know, I think it was all kind of a setup to some degree. I mean, it's hard to think of it like that sometimes, but in hindsight, you know, we both learned a lot from it. And even before my husband's death, he knew that there was more to this, you know, that we were going to learn a lot from it, and I was the one to carry on the work. So, you know, that's part of my reason for being here. So, you know, that's very much in my blueprint and my mission.
Well, I definitely take my hat off to you. And this particular hangout is going to be replayed for your Vibrant Health Secrets audience. And some of them are going to be listening to it via audio. Some of them are going to be watching the interview itself, the hangout replay. And so I want to let people know where they can find out about the products that you've put together and where they can find out the generous offer that you've made, because you've actually made an offer to spend 30 minutes with individuals that decide to go for your second offer in a certain time frame. And I find that that's fascinating, because in 30 minutes you can take at home and you can just zero in with all your years of experience, and you can just say, okay, this, and this. And I strongly recommend that people get building biologists in to look at their home, to measure, to find out what's going on, and so on. So you're doing the same thing, and you're able to do that remotely with your information that you have and the ability for people to tap into their own intuitive testing. So this, to me, is like a phenomenal offer that you've made. And so people are able to find out about that, the members of your Vibrant Health Secrets, and you're able to find out about that at your vibranthealthsecrets.com/Karen. So that's your vibranthealthsecrets.com/KAREN. So that's your vibranthealthsecrets.com/Karen. And Karen, you know, you've given me a lot of hope, because I'm telling you, I was feeling really lousy, and I'm used to vibrant health. I thrive on vibrant health. In fact, today I'm going to go swimming after this interview. So I just swimming in the lake, and it's getting cold, but I love it. Yeah. So I'm wondering, do you have some parting information that you'd like to share with our listeners? What would you like them to take away from this complete interview?
First of all, that there's more than just hope. I'm providing more than hope. I took a lot of time to also learn how to provide solutions, and people just need to be aware of what's happening to them, what's in their environment, what their body is trying to tell them. You know, these aches and pains and symptoms are all messages. It's messages our body is trying to relay to us that there's a problem, and we just need to figure out what that problem is and find the solution. And the EnerGems I look at as the foundation for any health program. And I think it's a great starting point for any health program, because it helps people heal. The geopathic stress is a block to healing, and other therapies just don't work as well when there's geopathic stress. So it would be to look at what's in your environment and make some choices. What can you do that can help you and your family?
And it's interesting, because I think we can all do things. Like, it doesn't really matter what your current financial situation is, because a lot of people with EHS are in the condition that you were. They're not able to move, they're not able to do anything, they feel too darn lousy. But you make it possible for people to start learning things that they can do step by step by step. And really, awareness is a huge one. We need to understand more about what's going on. I think that geopathic stress is a fascinating topic. I'm going to learn a lot more about it myself. I also am very concerned with EMF radiation and the EMF exposure that our children are facing with wireless in schools and so on. So I really want to thank you for giving us more than hope, for giving us a blueprint to heal. I really appreciate you. I appreciate the time that you've spent with us. It's I don't know, you know, you really are giving so much. How old are you today, if I may ask?
69, 70 in just a couple of months.
And you're feeling better than you did.
And feel like I'm getting younger. So I am in a lot of ways younger and getting healthier instead of just the opposite.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know from our viewing audience, all the people that are viewing today, send the same thank you I do to you, Karen Mileson, for the wonderful job you're doing. It's really appreciated. And I thank you deeply.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on your show. It's been a privilege.
Great. And I'll be seeing you again soon on the EMF Summit.
Yes, very good.
Super. Okay. Thank you so much.